Howdy folks, Brian here, and a very quick video from me today answering a viewer request. Actually, I've had a comment on one of my previous videos, the one that I did on the Confessions of a Tarot Addict tab, from D. Clark. Hi D, who asks me, I talked on that video about the Spiral Tarot, and I've talked about it on other videos that I've done as well, and she left me a message saying, please when you have a moment could you flick through the Spiral Tarot book for us. I'm still looking for a copy, and you are right, they're very expensive, but I think I may just have to have it. And the deck, the Spiral Tarot deck, which is now a firm favourite deck of mine, isn't out of print, it's still available, but the book, which originally came in a deck and book set, does seem to be out of print and is quite hard to track down. And I actually found this copy in Australia. I think I got it through Abe Books and from a seller in Australia, and I paid rather a lot of money for it for the size of book that it is, which I don't regret doing, but I would have obviously liked to have been able to get it much cheaper. And by the way, tarot deck and book manufacturers and publishers, please listen to this. If you have got a deck that is still in print and a book that was in print but is no longer in print, couldn't you perhaps make the book available as a downloadable PDF on your website, or perhaps as an ebook available through Kindle? I'm sure it wouldn't cost very much to do. As somebody who's published my books to Kindle, I know that it doesn't really cost very much to get them ready for Kindle. And it would be a great way of making the information available, and probably would actually support the sales of the deck. So just a thought from me there. But in the meantime, since this is not available as a Kindle or downloadable PDF, I am going to give you a bit of a walkthrough of the book. And I think what we'll do is I'll just show you what's in the book, and we'll maybe pick a couple of cards and I'll read to you what's in the book, so that you get a sense of whether it really is worth tracking down. So I wouldn't want you to get the book D if you weren't absolutely sure that it was for you. So I'm going to turn the camera setup around, we're going to have a look at this book in a bit of detail, and yeah, we'll see if we can give you what you're looking for. See you shortly. Okay, here we are back again with the Spiral Tarot, the book and the deck, and I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the book. I've already done a walkthrough of the deck in a previous video. I'll link that below, a video where I talked about trimming the deck and gave a review of the deck. And those of you who follow my channel will know that I'm a big fan of the Spiral Tarot, especially once it's been trimmed. So the first thing to say, and to reassure you if you haven't got a copy of the book, given that it's so hard to come by, is that if you are at all familiar with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, you will have no trouble reading this deck, because it's very much based on the Rider-Waite-Smith. Many of the cards, here's the Five of Pentacles, many of the cards, Two of Swords, are just so obviously based on the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. If you've got any kind of knowledge of Rider-Waite-Smith, then you will be very familiar with these cards. So don't feel at all, if you want to enjoy the Spiral Tarot, that you need to go and buy the book. You don't. Certainly not if you just want to have a lovely Rider-Waite-Smith style deck. So, with that said, one thing, oh, pardon me for bumping that, I've got a new camera set up, and it's a slightly wobbly camera holder, so I hope I don't jar you too much. Having said what I've just said, it is worth saying that when it comes to the majors, the Major Arcana, then although they are, again, very familiar to those of you who know of Rider-Waite-Smith, there, you'll recognize many of the images, many you won't. There's the Moon card, for example, in Spiral Tarot. The Chariot looks familiar, the Moon looks somewhat less familiar. High Priestess, very familiar. World, pretty familiar. There's the Sun, or somewhat, different looking Sun card in this deck. There we have the Emperor, the Lovers, the Magician, the Devil, Strength, and the Hierophant. And actually, let's just stop here at the Hierophant and use him as a good jumping in point to the book, because as I say, the details of the majors in the book are, of the minors in the book, are pretty much in line with the Rider-Waite-Smith system. What you do find that is a bit different though is that the author and artist Kay Steventon has very explicitly linked the numbered cards with the equivalent numbered arcanum. So all of the fives, for example, are linked to the Hierophant, and she goes into some detail in the book about why that is. And that's not an entirely unusual thing to do, but it isn't necessarily something that you come across in every book about tarot, so it's worth just being aware of that. But let's just have a look at what is said about the Hierophant, so you can get an idea of the kind of information that's in the book and also the format in which it's laid out. So here are the pages for the Hierophant Major Arcanum card, and it starts off with keywords: listening to the inner voice, inner tuition, healing, conformity, beliefs, learning, seeking and knowledge. Now obviously this is an unusual Hierophant card. This doesn't look particularly like the Hierophant card from Rider-Waite. So let's see what the book says about this particular image and why it was chosen. So the myth behind it, each Major Arcanum card has a myth behind it, and the book goes into the myth. Now another, just a little tip here before we go through this, again, if you don't have this book, if you know what the myth is, then you can find out some background details to the card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, underneath this video, I'm going to list all the Major Arcana cards, and I'm going to write down what the myth is that is related to the card. So even if you can't get the book, you can go and read up on the myth, and that will give you some background knowledge to the imagery that's here. So here's the Hierophant, and it says under myth: according to one version of the Greek myth, Chiron was the son of the Titan god Cronus and the nymph Pilphria. Philera. I can't speak today. Philera. One day, while being chased by Cronus, Philera changed herself into a mare in order to escape the attention of the amorous god. Cronus immediately took on the form of a stallion and pursued Philera. It's probably pronounced Philyra, but I'm saying Philera. Mare and stallion mated. In due course, Chiron was born, half man, half horse. Shocked by her son's deformity, Philera begged the gods to redeem her from her fate. The gods obliged and changed her into a linden tree. Chiron's first wound was the rejection by his mother. Later in the myth, Chiron was accidentally wounded by one of Hercules' poisoned arrows, inflicting a wound that would not heal. Chiron was both psychologically and physically wounded. And it goes on in the rest of this page to give more detail of the story behind the myth. Now, I'm not going to read it all to you, but you could always pause the video and read it for yourself. So let's just have a look over the page. And then we find that there's a continuation of the story, going into some more detail on the story. And then we have the divinatory meaning. And it says here, when the Hierophant appears in a spread, it indicates the time to question what society expects us to believe in the light of what we know is our truth. It could be an opportunity to be honest and retain one's integrity in the face of criticism. The question may arise, can I be myself and still function efficiently in society? One may take on the role of teacher or counsellor, or a teacher may appear in your life to impart important knowledge. The healer may appear to heal old wounds. One may be drawn to some new philosophy or spiritual quest. Let's just have a quick, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will page through just to show you what the book's constructed like. So we start off by having some basic information, an introduction to tarot and getting to know the cards, a bit about the Fool's Journey and how it's split into the major and minor arcana, what the suits signify, a bit about the court cards, and some detailed information on the minor arcana cards. Then information about readings and spreads. So fairly traditional information available in the book, but also some very interesting information that isn't otherwise available. So the things about getting to know your card is pretty much what's in all books, and then the interesting stuff, of course, is the information about the major arcana. And here with the Fool, which I think is a really beautiful Fool card, this is the myth of young Perceval and his journey and his relationship with the Grail. And of course in this card we see the Grail being very clearly symbolized. So let's see if we can find the actual card. There it is. And then we have the Hermit, and again a very different Hermit. This is a female Hermit, and we have Vesta, and we have the symbol for Vesta astrologically there. So here we have the Devil card and that marvellous image of the woman looking at the devil but seeing herself in the mirror. A rather interesting take. And of course, you know, as one might expect, here we have the legend of the myth of Lucifer, the light bringer. information about the astrological connotations, the divinatory meaning, really typical information about the minors and the court cards, no particular relationship given in terms of what the court cards represent other than the traditional ones. So the other thing that's worth saying is that there's a fantastic section at the back on suggested reading if you want to find out more about the thinking behind this tarot. Oops, don't you there, and then notes as well. So I would say that the book is a really good guidebook to have, but if you work out what some of the myths are in relation to the tarot, then you are good to go, and you will be able to, I think, form a pretty strong connection with this most intriguing of decks. Well, definitely one of my favourite of my recent deck acquisitions. So I hope that was useful to you, Dee, and to anyone else who's watching this video, and I'll see you all again very soon.